All right, today we're diving into one of the most incredible breakthroughs in modern medicine, CAR T-cell therapy. It's this completely revolutionary idea that doesn't just treat cancer, it actually reprograms your own immune system, turning it into a precision-guided, cancer-destroying force.
So let's just start with this one powerful question. What if your own body could cure your cancer? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But for a growing number of patients, this is actually becoming a reality.
Now, to really get why this therapy is such a massive deal, we have to go back and look at what things were like before it existed. For so many patients, their diagnosis really felt like a completely unsolvable problem.
Just imagine for a second, you or someone you love has an advanced blood cancer, like acute lymphoblastic leukemia or a lymphoma. You've been through chemo, maybe even a stem cell transplant, and nothing's worked. The cancer just keeps coming back. For the longest time, that was it. That was the end of the road.
This quote from Dr. James Kushendifer at the National Cancer Institute, wow. It just sums up the desperation perfectly. These weren't just tough cases. They were considered virtually untreatable. The medical world was in desperate need of a totally new way of thinking. And that new way of thinking led to this wild idea, the concept of engineering a living drug. The whole idea was to create a treatment that wasn't some chemical you take, but a living, breathing, dynamic part of the patient's own body.
Okay, so let's walk through how this actually works. First, doctors collect a patient's own T cells. These are the natural-born killers of our immune system. Then, in a lab, these cells get a major genetic upgrade. After that, they're grown and multiplied into an army of hundreds of millions. And finally, this new army of supercharged cells is infused right back into the patient. The whole thing, from start to finish, takes about 3 to 5 weeks.
Now, the real magic here is something called the chimeric antigen receptor, or CAR for short. Think of it like a two-part upgrade for the T cell. One part sticks out and acts like a highly specific GPS, programmed to find and lock onto a protein found only on the surface of cancer cells. The other part is on the inside, and it's basically a turbocharger. The instant that GPS locks on, the turbocharger kicks in, superactivating the T cell and giving it the power to utterly destroy the cancer cell.
So, what happens when you unleash this living drug inside a patient? Well, the results have been nothing short of transformative.
Just look at this number, more than 80%. In the early trials for children with relapsed acute lymphoblastic leukemia, these are kids who had absolutely no other options left. More than 80% of them went into complete remission. Many of these children have now survived for years, cancer-free. It looks like they've actually been cured.
And the impact is just as stunning for adults with large B-cell lymphoma, a really common and aggressive cancer. For patients who had failed other treatments, the 5-year survival rate was, well, it was dismal, less than 10%. With CAR T-cell therapy, that number jumps to over 30%. That is a monumental shift in a person's outlook. And you know, this isn't some experimental, one-off treatment anymore. As you can see, there are now multiple FDA-approved CAR T-cell therapies out there for all different kinds of blood cancers, from leukemias and lymphomas all the way to multiple myeloma. This technology is officially a core part of modern medicine.
But like any really powerful treatment, CAR T-cell therapy is not without its challenges. There are some pretty significant hurdles that researchers and doctors are still working hard to overcome.
The two biggest worries are a couple of pretty serious side effects. One is called cytokine release syndrome, or CRS. That's where the superactivated immune cells go into overdrive and flood the body with chemicals, causing dangerously high fevers. The other is a set of neurological problems called ICANS, which can cause confusion and trouble speaking. Now, the crucial thing to know here is that doctors now have really effective drugs to manage these side effects, which makes the whole therapy much safer than it was in those early days.
But maybe the biggest hurdle of all is trying to make this work for solid tumors. We're talking about cancers in the brain, lungs, or ovaries. And the challenges here are huge. You see, unlike blood cancers, solid tumors often don't have one single clear target for the CAR T cells to lock onto. They also create this kind of hostile force field around themselves that can actually shut the T cells down. And on top of all that, the cancer cells inside just one solid tumor can be wildly different from each other, which makes them a way more complicated target to hit.
So, with all these challenges, where does the field go from here? Well, the future of CAR T is all about tackling these very problems head-on.
I absolutely love this quote from Dr. Crystal Mackall. It just perfectly captures the feeling in the research community. They know there are challenges, but they also believe they are just getting started.
So what's on the horizon? Well, for starters, researchers are working on off-the-shelf therapies that use cells from healthy donors, which would mean treatment could be ready to go immediately. They're also engineering smarter CAR T cells, arming them with multiple GPS systems, basically, to overcome the defenses of those tricky solid tumors. And they're starting to test this therapy much earlier in the treatment process, which could potentially replace years of grueling chemotherapy.
And all of this brings us to one final, really profound question. We started this whole conversation talking about cancer, but the implications here are so much bigger. The ability to take our own cells, re-engineer them, and then give them back to ourselves as a living medicine, that is a fundamental shift in how we think about treating disease. So could our own engineered cells truly be the future of medicine?